Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Life List, a birding podcast. All our co-hosts are here. I'm Molly Brown, here with George Armistead and Alvaro Jaramillo.
Hello.
Hey guys.
How's it going?
It's good. Today, we're just chatting, doing our normal
chit-chatting,
BSing, and just talking about all sorts of stuff. But we've been on here talking to each other for a while. We were going through our most recent newsletter that came out, and we've just been talking about some of the articles that were in here. So, I don't know, George, you want to kick us off and talk about what stood out to you?
Sure. Yeah. Our latest newsletter, compiled by our good friend Eric Bonesley, we've been doing these 9 months now. They come out twice a month, and they've been fun. They've been a good outlet for kind of sharing news articles that we think are just fun and interesting. The latest one I liked had a fun article on the dodo. Which I think everybody thinks, everyone's like, what do they say? The expression's dumb as a dodo, right? Like everyone talks about them like they're these super kind of not real smart things because they're, or dead as the dodo. I guess that was the expression, right? It's dead as the dodo. But it wasn't really that long ago.
Deader than a dodo.
Yeah. Deader than a dodo, yeah. I think it wasn't even that long ago that they actually went extinct. And I think they're related
1700s or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. And weren't they related to? Aren't they like related to doves mostly?
Yeah, they're pigeons.
Yeah, I think like the Nicobar pigeon is like its closest relative or something, which is a cool looking bird.
And there were multiple species. Some of them called solitaires, right?
Dodos.
Yeah, the reunion solitaire.
Yeah,
and I think there were like 3 species.
I got to say, we are definitely the only podcast that has had the reunion solitaire come up not once, but twice.
Yeah, this season.
Yeah, that is a distinction of some sort.
Yeah.
Dodo should be our new Life List icon on our
go.
little silhouette.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of funny.
There's a cool image on this article that kind of shows what this ecosystem on Mauritius might have looked like. And it's like, it looks prehistoric, even though, as you say, it's really just, probably less than a millennia since it looked like that. But the article is, dodos were fast and powerful, not slow and inept. A definitive preserved specimen suggests. And this new study has cleared up some misconceptions about the extinct bird, showing that they were actually pretty fast and powerful. But of course, they had just like sort of vestigial wings. So I think they're even though they were fast, they were probably still pretty easy to snatch up and make a meal out of. But there are some interesting quotes in the article. One of the authors, Mark Young, said, "Was the dodo really the dumb, slow animal we've been brought up to believe it was? The few written accounts of live dodos say it was fast. It was a fast-moving animal that loved the forest." So at any rate, this is a good example of an article that I think is really fun and interesting. I don't want to, no spoilers, on this dodo article.
Well, but if they're related to pigeons, though, they're probably not that smart. That's all I got to say.
They might be pretty fast, though.
They might be fast.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing faster than like a mourning dove flying by. So speed and the pigeon group actually go hand in hand.
Yeah, I guess you got to be
smarts.
fast.
I don't know. I mean, at least in my subjective viewpoint of what, I don't know. I just don't get a lot. But looking at a pigeon in the city, where it's looks at you and sort of, and shows any sign of like that he understands what you are. Like it's unlike a raven. Like a raven looks at you and you're like, oh,
right.
Yeah,
there's
that
going on
raven
between those eyes.
I know something. I don't know what it is, but eyes tell you something.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
There is a new guide. There's a new pocket guide to pigeon watching out by Rosemary Moscow. And Al, I think there's at least one of us on this podcast that might benefit from this. The subtitle is Getting to Know the World's Most Misunderstood Bird.
Well, I think I should keep an open mind and and grab this book because obviously I'm that I should like pigeons. Obviously,
Yeah, they should, man.
yeah, they're all around.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a pigeon.
Yeah, and the doves. I got to say one thing though. If you are kind of a person who's spent your whole life birding kind of in the U.S. and Canada, and then you go elsewhere in the world, you realize how amazing pigeons and doves are in terms of beauty and just general look and sometimes rarity, and also um, if you go to deserts, they're really like there's something about doves and deserts, just has pretty cool ability to function without much water, and you just don't get that from looking at a city pigeon till you travel around.
It's can be hard to see a proper rock pigeon too.
Yeah, I have strong feelings on this, which I probably shouldn't have on the podcast. But when we have doves at the conservation center that are in for rehab, which is very often, they do not do anything to help themselves seem to be more intelligent than the birds around them. They are the worst to work with because they just explode out of the cage every time you go close to touching. They're the only birds that do that consistently. They're like the birds that get out the most by far. Songbirds, of course, raptors that come in, they're way more intelligent than the mourning doves. But even songbirds don't have this, like, I don't know. They don't think about anything except like doing their whole, explosion of taking off, which is fast.
It's like a hardwired response to whatever.
Even if you're just dropping food in or whatever, they're such a pain to work with. It also cracks me up. We have doves that are often on our little hillside here by the house that was disturbed and doesn't really have grass coming in yet or anything, and they come bouncing up, and it makes me laugh every time I'm sitting on the porch watching them, because a lot of times when doing these tours, particularly like in Colombia, each time there are a few doves that we're targeting that are coming up to feeders, and you like go to the spot and you're really quiet and they're very spooky, and you're waiting for them and you hear like okay, shh, it's coming. It's just another dove walking up the exact same way that they do here at the house. Doves are prettier and pigeons are prettier in the old world. They're still pretty here. They're still pretty, but they're also
we've got a couple good ones. Yeah.
I try to appreciate their evolutionary longevity. They've got something working for them if they've stuck around this long and outlived the dodos, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I really thought there were images from those sailors back in the day, that the Portuguese sailors with like clubs and actually like clubbing dodos. And that's where the idea of like they were so dumb that you could just kind of almost like spruce grouse walk right up to them. So this idea that dodos, are fast is interesting, but it's like, okay, so what was that idea? Where did it come from that they were slow and dumb? Like, was it just an incorrect assessment from the time that got through back to Europe, or what? But these sailors actually ate every single dodo, so they apparently were very good tasting too. But they just it takes a lot to kill every single individual, so they must have been pretty easy to catch.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of I'm fighting back a little bit on this. Dodos were really fast,
The apparently the first recorded mention was 1598 by some Dutch sailors, and then the last widely accepted sighting was 1662.
Huh. So, yeah, no photos on eBird, that's for sure.
I was thinking that if there'd be any photographic evidence of these birds, that'd be pretty cool. But
that's a question. What is the oldest photo in eBird?
Oh, that's
whoa!
Ooh.
Wow.
like oldest real bird photo that is on eBird. Somebody find it, please. Let us know.
Well, there's probably some old ivory-billed woodpecker photos from like the 40s.
Yeah, but those would just be in the 40s, right? And stuff.
That's a good question.
Yeah, those. Yeah, what ivory-billed in the 40s or 30s, when there would have been photography in the 1800s.
Yeah, here's an Arthur Allen photo from 1935 of ivory-billed woodpecker.
Huh.
There's an eBird checklist for it.
Maybe could that be the oldest? Maybe there's something else we're missing.
Imperial woodpecker? Is there anything? No, there's just that film, Imperial woodpecker.
No, but just a regular bird. Maybe there's just a pigeon.
Right. Yeah, that's a good guess. Or a chicken or something.
Yeah. Yeah, chicken.
Yeah.
Well, I did see another article there about smoke and birds, and people studying them in California and forest fires and what the birds do, and also how the smoke affects their physiology, their health, in a sense. Like nobody.
This was from the newsletter?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, it just brought me back to the 4 years ago, whenever it was, when we had the huge forest fire around here, where it became like night in the middle of the day. It was just, you couldn't, you needed to have lights on in the house and all that. And how there were no birds anywhere. Like they were just absent, like they were sleeping, is what I thought. And then it cleared up a little bit around 2 or 3 p.m. and you could start hearing suddenly house finches moving around. And I thought, how weird it must be. I mean, at least we understand what's going on. These birds are like, geez, I mean, what is happening? So it's interesting. Yeah, interesting that the article just is talking about research on other aspects of smoke and birds, and the fact that we have to even study it because it's becoming more common in certain places. And well, not just the West, but the East has had some issues too recently, right?
Yeah.
It's a little scary. But on the other hand, like, yeah, how does it all work? We need to figure all this out. Like what are the real effects on birds and other wildlife to have this smoke, sometimes for a week or so, just elevated smoke in a place. Interesting article.
There's another good one that came out, Molly, recently. It was, and I will say, I think Eric does a good job. He tries to kind of choose stuff that is largely kind of upbeat and interesting, not necessarily, there's a lot of tough conservation news out there. But this was one that was nice, which was that there was a record-smashing 17 California condors chicks hatched at the LA Zoo this year. So that's the most they've had in a year, I gather. And there's a nice article about that. There is also an article about golden cheek warblers' endangered status being the subject of a legal battle, which was an interesting one. And what was the other one I wanted to mention?
Speaking of the zoo, I think it's Los Angeles Zoo. The famed yellow-headed caracara has been caught, and the LA,
goodness. LA,
Tell us about this. I guess it flew over towards the airport. I don't have all the details. I should, but I think LAX, Los Angeles Airport, and it was out there, and they caught it. And given that, I guess, a wild bird, a truly wild bird that's on the checklist of the U.S. birds, you go and re-release it elsewhere, right? But in this case, they just kept it in the zoo, figuring like, well, we can't just re-release this thing. Like, what is it even? I mean, these are the airport people, I think is how it worked. And I thought, well, that's an interesting call, because the birders obviously want it to be wild and consider it wild, and you should re-release it somewhere because it's a wild bird got here on its own. But some bird people are like, probably didn't make it all. We've talked about it, the boat, the ships, and all that. And but the airport and zoo people, I guess, just made the call. It's like, you know what, this thing doesn't belong here, and they took, and they were worried about it with, airplanes and all that being in that vicinity, a pretty big bird, so they just caught it, and no more ticking the old yellow-headed caracara. So interesting.
I saw this on Facebook. I kind of got mad, and then I didn't look into it more, but I meant to bring it up for us to talk about. So
Yeah.
This was an uninjured bird. It was just
uninjured bird.
caught.
Yeah, they weren't rescuing it. They're basically
but it was at the airport, so they have the ability, right,
I was
to
going
catch
to ask,
anything.
like, is this legal? But I guess that's the answer.
If they're worried it's going to get into an engine and down a
Do
plane,
they catch other birds at the airport? Is this a regular thing where they're catching hawks?
I think they do, but they re-release them in a distance away.
Famously, the Logan Airport in Boston, they do that with snowy owls because they love the airport, and so they often have to. I don't know how they're managing it now, but historically there was like a guy, I think it was Norm Smith, would go out there and catch snowy owls and try to move them.
Another thing that popped up with the discussion of this, somebody talked about the marsh harrier. Remember that it theoretically got sucked into the engine or hit a plane or something, and then they identified it from, was it at Newark Airport, from the feathers, something like that. But they discussed this, and it said something like I think it was like 4,000 feet or something is where it happened, like the plane hit the bird. And I'm thinking, no Harrier's going to go that high. It was something, I forget what the number. Then I was like thinking, how did all this happen? And have we, like, is there two bird theory here? Because, like, I can't imagine that a marsh harrier up like thousands of feet up in the air and then randomly getting hit by I thought it was sort of happened while it was landing and it was close to the ground, is how I had it in my head.
Yeah, that's the way I imagined it. Yeah.
But apparently it wasn't. It was higher up. And then I thought, that makes no sense. It's like CSI bird strike. We need to, like, look into this. Maybe maybe somebody planted that feather. I don't know.
Kidding. Yeah.
Makes no sense.
No. The yellow-headed caracara situation. I get removing it. That much I get. But putting it in captivity based on species, first off, messing with, okay, well, I guess you can say messing with nature as it is, because ship-assisted argument. But I would imagine that a yellow-headed caracara is as opportunistic as a recently fledged red-tailed hawk.
Maybe more.
If anything's got a shot at surviving when you're dropping it into a situation like that, if that's the case and how it got there, then I would bet on a caracara.
I'm with you. I don't like it. To me, it feels wrong. You don't know how it got there. It's not. I don't know. And who
are you to determine its fate at that point anyway?
This is like total judgment call. But let's say if this caracara had been out most of the time in some savanna type habitat, in somewhere in California, rather than parking lots and fast food joints, it doesn't really strike me as like you've taken a bird out of the wild almost. Like it's almost like a semi-captive bird that was flying around. I mean, it's something about it is like not. I see why they did it, maybe, or why they decided not to release it, because then they're like, well, where do we take it? Do we take it to a parking lot, similar habitat to where they found it, or do we release it somewhere truly native where it may have some negative? I don't know. aspect to the local environment. You know, you could release it in a nice park somewhere in the hills and it might do well, but maybe it's eating then all sorts of cool lizards. I don't know.
Well, again, is that species dependent in that case? I mean, is it a red tail that's hanging out in a dumpster alley? Otherwise, anyway.
Yeah.
We have
No,
plenty of red tails in urban settings, you know, right downtown here in Philly.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'm backtracking us a little bit to the article on smoke because I recently came across this Project Phoenix, which is looking at bird responses to smoke. I think the study is based out of Seattle, but they're asking for community contributions, 10-minute intervals of reporting stuff. So I'm going to link that in our show notes too, to see if folks want to participate in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's mentioned in this article too. So that'd be
Project Phoenix.
Good.
Cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely don't see every article that goes into this newsletter before it comes out. So I'm always going through and learning stuff too.
There's one on caracaras as well. And it's about how they might need a PR makeover. But really, it's about assessing knowledge of caracaras, compiling information.
Yeah. The LA one does, definitely.
The LA one does.
Yeah, for real.
I think my favorite bird-related book ever is on caracaras. We've talked about it on here a few times, but A Most Remarkable Creature. If you read that, you're going to love caracaras.
Yeah.
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 I own but have not read that yet. It is high on my list. Everyone I know that's read it absolutely loves it.
Yeah. I've actually read it and listened to the audiobook, which is by the author, and I'm blanking on that person's name right now.
Jonathan Mayberg.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah, so it's a very good audiobook too if you're into that.
We have a review of it on the Hillstar book review section.
Oh yeah.
I believe isn't he like in the band Shearwater?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a Shearwater.
That's right. We talked about this.
Yeah. We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, a bunch of good stuff in the newsletter. I think we'd really encourage folks to check it out and can find out how to sign up pretty easily on the Life Lifts website from the Hillstar Nature website as well.
Yeah, we have some listener questions that we're going to answer today. I want to kick it off with a question that I thought of for you two that was spurred by our most recent newsletter article as well. So there's an article in here about tracking dialects in yellow-naped parrots, critically endangered species that's in Central America. I think at least historically ranged into Mexico. I'm not sure where that stands. But so the study's talking about dialects. And I thought, of course, if I go to the West Coast, cardinals sound different. Cardinals aren't on the West Coast. They're in Arizona. Every time I go to Arizona, I think about how different a cardinal sounds. And I'm like, yeah, birds have dialects. But the point of this study was they looked at these 3 different regions. I think the first year was it was a while back. I don't have this article up. 1984 or something. And they looked at it again in 2005. The birds sounded the same in each of those 3 areas, distinct from each other, but they hadn't changed. But between 2005 and 2016, there were noticeable changes in the sounds that these birds made in each of these places. So this article is talking about, climate change and habitat change and fragmentation and these different reasons that go for that. But I was curious if either of you have ever experienced birds sounding different over a period of time like that in anywhere that you've been to frequently for many years.
Not over a period of time for me. I've certainly noticed different dialects, even just regionally here. And they talk. I've seen articles about how cardinals in urban areas develop a different sound because of the way the sound echoes off of buildings and so forth. And I remember going out to some of the remote, not hugely remote, but islands in the Chesapeake Bay, my father's done a lot of exploring of the islands out in the bay, and going out and hearing a Carolina wren out there and being like, I know that that's Carolina wren, but it doesn't sound like any Carolina wren I've heard before. And noticing that on a couple other islands. And of course, when you get further afield even, you can notice that of more widespread birds. Over time, in a specific spot, can't say I have noticed that. I don't know about you, Al.
Somewhat. We have really well-marked versions of white crown sparrow songs here, and
oh, right,
and
yeah,
and the local dialect is really like something I hear it and I just like, oh yeah, local bird. And a few miles from my house, I started hearing this trill, like little trill at the end of one. I was like, that's really weird. It was in the breeding season, so I know it's one of the local breeders. And I thought it must be just a weird thing. But then another one was doing it right next to it. And I thought, oh, could this be like a start of a new dialect, or so I kind of had it in my back of my mind to go next year to that same area and see if that little trill bit is consistent, or not. But that is temporal. Well, at least not temporal, but something that I thought I would check back on it in time, see if that's happening. But definitely local, variations and dialects here. You get it quite a bit, and it's always in the birds that aren't very migratory. Like Carolina wren would be a good one. Although I think it's amazing how studies on indigo buntings, for example, and bobolinks have shown that the level of similarity of songs is totally related to distance. So any one group of those two is more similar sounding to each other through distance than to something that's further away. But every one of them is like that. So you think, how does that happen? Like, it's not like there's like bubbles and then, of suddenly bobolinks the buntings that sound a certain way and then they switch. It's just they're switching all the way along, gradually further out you get. And to me, that is almost more crazy, like without the distinctive lines of change, like it's just this gradual change throughout the entire distribution. You're like, whoa, that's pretty cool, So yeah, I always kind of ponder that because people are always really adamant about things like, oh yeah, it sounded like a rose-breasted grosbeak, which is relatively rare here versus a black-headed. And I'm thinking, well, they vary. I mean, all of these things vary in these songbirds that aren't flycatchers. And as birders, we're often so comfortable saying, yeah, it must be this. Oh, wow. Is it? Did you see it? No, but it just didn't sound like a black-headed grosbeak. I'd want to look at that one myself. See that. Be sure. Yeah.
I feel like I had a bit of a continuum of like, I mean, I remember when I was really intimidated by learning bird calls, which was several years ago at this point. But there was like a distinct summer where I was committed to starting to learn birds by ear. And now I just dearly love it. In most cases, I think I'd rather hear a bird than see a bird, to be honest, or at least in a lot of cases. But there's like this point where it's like, well, if you learn this, it's actually more reliable than, looking for these visual traits to learn birds. And then you get to a point where you're like, wait a second. Nope, this is a whole nother world of nuance and so many things can happen. And then if you get enough time and you pay attention enough, there was something, George, that I forget what you had, like a yellowthroat that was singing something else.
I had a towhee.
Oh yeah, that's what
an eastern towhee that was alternating between like a typical towhee song and doing a blue jay. And I watched it doing it and like my head exploded. And then I read up on them and they are apparently known to do that. And a couple, I think they do scarlet tanager as well. They do a couple others that they incorporate sometimes. My father watched a yellowthroat sing a perfect pine warbler once, as happens because they learned the wrong song sometimes.
Crazy stuff. Well, I also realized as we were talking that for these yellow-naped parrots in this study, I guess at least some of them are probably the same individuals that were studied that long ago, because this is maybe, learned behavior that's changing over their lives when they live that
Parrots
long.
live a long time too.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, this is the kind of content that you get in our newsletter. It's really fun to talk about it too. It's like a book club or something. We're actually, it encourages me to kind of ask these questions a bit more. So I'm glad we're doing this. And we've also got some listener questions here, and this is leading very nicely into our first one, which is, what is your favorite bird call or song and why? Who wants to kick us off there?
Mute Swan. Yeah.
Mute Swan. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, bare-eyed ground dove. Right?
You go. I got to think about this.
Yeah, there are so many good ones, right? I will say that there's some that I hate too, and it would be worth maybe discussing those at some point too. But
please, let's do least favorite.
Like rufous-bellied thrush is a bird that whenever I go back to like Argentina, I'm always like, God, well, they just put a sock in it. Like, can't you put a cork in those birds' mouth? And most macaws, as spectacular as they are, I find their vocalizations pretty objectionable. It's just like the most scratchy, harsh, incredibly loud sound. That's
another one that makes me laugh. Yeah. You just think of them as being like just the most incredibly massive, majestic birds. And then you get there and you have that experience of like, like going to roost in the evening or something. It's hilarious.
Such an ugly sound, in my opinion.
And you're sitting there like, you're as a group and you're admiring them and you're like, wow. But then at the same time, you're like, holy cow, what a rough call.
Yeah. Yeah, rufous-bellied thrush is like one where it's like I feel like I've had multiple nights in Buenos Aires where it's like you hear them going like pleepler, 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 pleep, and it just like goes on and on and on like that, and you're just like, goodness gracious. But for favorites, man, there are some good ones. I kind of forever love the willow ptarmigan. It's like one of those, like, I think a lot of people doing all these Alaska trips over the years, I think a lot of people arrive into Alaska just thinking, man, ptarmigan would be a really cool bird to see, but they have no idea what it sounds like. And most years we get to hear them. Every now and then we have a year where, something happens, we just don't get to hear one. But usually at some point, they display or they pick up and fly, and they often call when they fly. And they just have, to me, it sounds like the sounds that they used for the Jawas in Star Wars. Like that's, for some reason, that's always what it makes me think of. But it's not that they have the Utini call that the Jawas do, but there's some other sounds where they're just like kind of bickering or chatting with each other that sound kind of ptarmigan-like. But my favorite is when they do like a bagel, a bagel, a bagel, a bagel. That's what the willow ptarmigan has that, and they do the bagow, and it's just like, it's to see them do that, to hear it, it's a weird sound, and then to actually see them do it while they're in display is one of my favorite things.
To see George do it's pretty weird too, I gotta say.
Yeah, that wasn't my best. I'm not rehearsed, but
the way he threw his head back, and the tongue sticking out.
Yeah. Not too shabby.
Well, my alarm is winter wren. That's what I wake up to.
That's a great one.
That I haven't. Yeah, that's pretty classic, I would say. But
the most skilled
that's an easy
fiddler
answer for me. Yeah. Another one that I really like is olive-sided flycatcher. I don't like the mnemonic for it at all. I'm not a mnemonic fan in general, but I think that could just fit so many birds, and it's just such a beautiful sound that doesn't need that phrasing matched with it. It's fine to go get some beer, but that's another one that I really
She doesn't even want to
enjoy
say it,
too.
Al.
Yeah.
She's like, doesn't want to perpetuate the.
No, I don't. I don't like mnemonics.
You know, the West has a slightly different song. The Olive Side Flycatchers, and you don't think about it till you hear them back to back. Like you get recordings and you go, oh yeah, they both have the same song, but different enough that you could identify them probably once if you learned them. You know, the different. I don't know. It's almost like intonations or something about it. You know, maybe it's like. Yeah, I don't even want to say what it is because I don't know, but they're different. Yeah.
Yeah. Another one that I feel like is just like a very happy sigh is blue-winged warbler.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I hear it, it gives me a little pause in a really nice way.
Yeah. I heard one of I remember the moment that I heard my first one of the spring last spring, and it was like a deeply emotional response to that sound. You know, it's just like, yeah.
I know the feeling. It's like a breathe in, breathe out sound to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I was gonna choose some others I've had in the past, but I think recently, the last couple of years, I have enjoyed the Japanese bush warbler.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that's a great one.
And it's partially I learned it in Hawaii originally, where they are introduced, but more recently I've been able to hear them and see them, and they're very common in Japan on the tours in Japan, and it's got multiple different voices and they're all distinctive, and some of them are just really distinctive. Where it's almost like I don't know it's and surprising, right? Like you'll hear this thing, and the clients will be like, "What the heck is that?" So that's really weird sounding, and it's like Japanese bush warbler, and then they see it and they're like, "Oh, it's kind of brown thing," but it's all in the voice for that bird, and very loud and very specific kind of tempos that it does. Almost like it answers itself, like it's hard to describe, but it's definitely like I hear it and I'm like, I'm somewhere neat, if I can.
Well, and it's got that crescendo to it, where it sort of starts out soft and gets pretty fast and louder, but all kind of on the same note.
Yeah.
It's a cool quality.
Yeah. The old Japanese bush warbler. That's a good one. I mean, local birds here. I do like the wren tit because the males and the females sing differently, and sometimes they duet. And it's we have a couple of birds that duet around here, but duetting is to me like this very magical thing that you always think that only tropical birds do. But the male wren tit then gets answered by the female, and it just sort of seems very foreign in a sense, like exotic to me, to have birds that do that. I don't know if Carolina wrens duet, or do they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So
song wrens are another one. I mean, that's a beautiful
duet. Yeah.
You get to hear that in the neotropics.
Yeah, that whole musician wrens and all those,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
How do you think folks feel about wrens in general? Like, do people get excited about wrens across the board? I feel like for some people just dearly love wrens, but it's a huge audio component to it, right? In a lot of cases, like they're incredibly like behavior and everything, a nice like unique shape, but they're not the most colorful birds. They're hard to see. I don't really have a feel for the general birder perception on them.
No, I think wasn't there. We had been looking at various questions. There was a question on what's the most underappreciated bird or something.
Yeah.
I would say as a group, wrens are really underappreciated because they are really, really kind of on their own. They're warblers, like you can say, oh, there's a cool little warbler, but then there's other stuff called warblers elsewhere, that sort of are similar, or finches, and there's
True. Yeah.
non-finch finches. But wrens, they're just like wrens. And in fact, they're so distinctive that other birds get described by them, like wren-like rushbird, or, you know, um, there's and the voice component, and in the tropics, those duets and triple, I don't know, we call them, where 3 or 4 of them are singing together, and they seem to be always doing something, and they're sort of
Yeah.
like busy, and all the nest
The
making.
adjective I always associate with them is industrious.
Yeah.
Like they feel the wrens to me are super industrious, right? Like they're, as you say, they're always doing something. They're busy. They the males often make a whole bunch of dummy nests, like they just, and they, I think it's an interesting example, because I feel like people do really like wrens, like everybody loves their backyard Carolina wren, maybe house wrens, maybe not quite as much because they are so aggressive. But those that are familiar, I think are well liked and enjoyed. But I think you're right that they are not, their diversity and their uniqueness, and the diversity really is pretty staggering once you start to look at it, and that it's mostly, that diversity is mostly confined to the New World, to the Americas. It's just it's an interesting group. So I feel like they're both appreciated and underrated at the same time.
Yeah, they're forgotten almost. Like sometimes if you say wrens, people go, "Oh yeah, wrens are great." But then if you say, "What are your top birds?" it'll never be a wren.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But wrens are very noticeable to non-birders. Lots of people, as you said, have a wren in their backyard, or they have a wren that's nesting on their porch, or they have these different associations. So I think maybe birders might underrate them less than, they're one of, like, the word wren is a common word for people to know, even more so than like warbler or something too. So on the flip side, I think there's a decent amount of public perception for them.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever thought about, let's say, maybe there's other groups where this applies to, how many of the wrens in North America are named for where they live? Like canyon wren, rock wren, house wren. It's sort of an interesting kind of, cactus wren. How we have very specific connotations of where they are, and you don't, and it's often almost like a habitat, and it applies really well. Like you will not see a rock wren away from rocks, and other birds, we don't have that same kind of link to where they are. So there's another cool thing about wrens.
I remember you saying, Al, that wrens are the new tapaculos.
Yeah.
That they're going to be split every which way. And,
yeah.
I think that will actually be pretty well received overall. I think people will be pretty excited about those developments as they transpire.
Yeah, house wren will become bungalow wren, and chateau
domicile.
wren. Yeah, domicile wren. Yeah, depending on the kind of housing that exists, like brownstone wren out east. I think so. Marsh wren, that's another one. Marsh wren's a good name. Sedge wren. Lot of habitat kind of related names for them. And I think it's because they're so distinctive. Like, this is a wren. This is the wren of the marsh. This is the wren of the house, And
they are pretty faithful to their habitats, a lot of species anyway.
Yeah. And then there's the happy wren down south.
Yeah.
That's a good name.
That is
happy wren. I mean, talk about, you can't say that and not smile. Come on. I mean,
come on.
The gloom and doom wren. No, doesn't exist.
Of the wrens that I've experienced, though, a happy wren stands out to me. It's being very unhappy with what was going on around it. It's not necessarily expressing happiness when it's going off.
Yeah, maybe that's
good
that's
name.
true.
Sparks conversation.
I know in Spanish, some of the wrens have, like, if you translate their names, one, I think Argentinian name for them is cockroach eaters. And then,
Cucarachero.
yeah, and then there's, I think in Central America, they're like egg breakers or egg eaters.
In some places, is it soterrey? I don't know what that means. Soterrey.
Yeah, I don't know.
For wrens.
The wrens. Yeah, I don't know what they call them in Spain, actually. The wren, what they call them.
El Ren.
Yeah, El Ren. Ronaldo.
Ronaldo. That's funny.
Oh, man.
All right. I've got one more listener question up here for today. And we might have 3 different answers for this one. But it's, how do you manage birding trips with your family or your non-birding friends? George, you seem to have this figured out.
Yeah, I think, man, it's a rare trip that I go on that is not really mostly a birding trip. And I think luckily my dad is, a birder. So a lot of our family trips going up involve birds. My family now all understands that, typically if I go someplace, I'd like for there at least to be a few birds around. So I don't really manage it that much, in that mostly places I go, there is at least a component, if it's not really mostly what we're doing. So maybe I'm unusual in that respect. It's not something I really have to manage that much.
Again, it sounds like you have it figured out. This is something that is solved for you.
I feel like it's basically like, George is inflexible. He will only do one kind of travel. And so we won't even bother asking him on some of these other trips. But oh well.
Well, my family didn't travel growing up. We farmed cattle and did not vacation, so that was not the case for me then. But I travel with my in-laws a bit now, and I have been asked to go on Alaskan cruises, and I haven't been to Alaska yet, and I can't bring myself to do that for my first trip to Alaska. So I've said no until I do a birding trip to Alaska, because I think I would just implode if I had to go through a trip without really getting to bird while I was there. But I am doing a family trip with Jimmy's family next summer, a Mediterranean cruise. Yeah, I've never been on a cruise before, so that will be a new experience in itself. But I'm planning some birding time before and after, and separating that from the family time. That's my plan there.
You see Balearic shearwaters.
There you go.
I know. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Or those Yelk ones, I guess, if you get further in. I don't know what
Depending
part of
on where the cruise is. Yeah, you might have a shot at both.
Yeah, maybe we'll do some maybe I'll pick y'all's brains on the podcast sometime, because I've been looking at options, and it'd be really fun to hop a couple islands in the Mediterranean before we go. Of course, price is a factor for that too. It's not necessarily the cheapest place to be traveling in June, but I would love to see some of those.
Al, how's your Ibiza tour going? Yeah.
Oh, the Birdy Till You Drop tour,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should have done that one some years ago, back in the day, but it's like yeah.
Well, honestly, it's an easy place to get to from a tourist perspective. That's one of my top options for where I want to go before we hop on this boat.
I would think there'd be some decent migration there, but I really don't know.
It'll be June. So anyway, this is how I handle these trips. I just plan my own stuff before and after, because otherwise I am typically the first person up. So, I have some mornings free when I'm traveling with non-birding family. I don't know the last time I've done a friend's trip that wasn't birding related. So I'm on your boat, George, for that one.
Yeah, I've been most of my life. In fact, going on when we do any vacation, it's never with a birder. So I've never, the only truly birding travel I do is the tours. So I'm pretty used to like going someplace and going and eating and doing some other stuff, you know, maybe hikes or what have you. Usually not in the best time for birding, and not I don't worry much about seeing birds or not, but my family's pretty lazy, so I do get up earlier than everybody else, and
I
I'll
guess you're
go.
not concerned about them listening either.
Well, I mean, it's not like it's not true. So I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, they're on vacation, so they sleep in and what have you, and then usually we don't have the dogs and all that, so we don't have the
Yeah.
same schedule. So I just get up earlier and go bird for an hour, whatever. Come back, have breakfast, and then I'm totally fine. I mean, I don't ever have kind of fear of missing out stuff when I'm in a place, like if we go we've been to Mexico or Hawaii and things like that over the time. Sometimes it's just much more close to home, but um, I think it works well. I like the fact that my life's not all birds all the time, and I feel like the benefit of going somewhere sometimes where birds aren't the major focus is grounding for me in a way, because otherwise I'd just be birding all the time, and then I feel like that would be not healthy for me, because all I do is birds work, is sort of birds all the time. So yeah.
That sort of brings up a good point too, with just like your preferences while you're traveling, which is a whole nother conversation, whether or not you're birding, just kind of having folks that you're compatible with for your travel styles, which is not always the case for me with family. But like I said, I get up early, I have my own time, then I feel okay.
Yeah, and if you are a parent and you go on a trip, I mean, like the classic vacation movies or whatever, in a sense, kids, no matter how much you like them, are never compatible with you as a it's they're always gonna kind of, their needs often take over what you'd rather do if it was just you and a friend, or you and your spouse, or whatever. So there's an element already that you're not going to do exactly what you want, because you are a parent. I mean, so anybody who's considering becoming a parent, where that sounds like, oh my gosh, you might not want to be a parent, I gotta say. So it's like you gotta sort of realize it's there's a lot of uh, give and take. It's mostly give. So, and I don't say it in a negative sense, but it's sort of maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm more relaxed about some going on a vacation, because I already know, that or the kids are gotten older now, but you always have that idea of like, well, I'm not going to quite get to do exactly what my dream trip would be here, because we got two little kids, or two medium-sized kids, whatever it might be during that time. So, and I think it's the same thing, like you're saying, with family. If you're with your in-laws or whatever, they're going to have various different needs, and you're probably going to want to make them happy more than you happy. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just sort of, um, I think that's part of what, you can't just go birding, all the time and leave everybody.
Very true. Have we talked about like family friendly birding destinations on the podcast?
I think sort of we touched on
Maybe
it
a
at one
while
point, way
back.
back. Yeah.
I thought so.
Costa
Thought that was
Rica.
here. Yeah, we were kind of talking about places that fit that. I'll have to see if I can find that episode and link it in here too. That's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
For the listeners, if this has spurred other questions, send them in, because we do bank these questions and get to them for Q&A episodes every now and then. So they're great to have. We appreciate you sending them. It's nice to hear that you're out there too. It's not just us talking in a room to each other every week. Yeah. Before we sign off today, I wanted to tell you both about something that I dropped in our messages before, but that I'm pretty excited about, that I'm getting started in, which is this whole different little venture for me. It's just a volunteer thing, but for the past couple months, I've been working on getting my ducks in a row, and now I'm in the final stages of getting my permitting to teach classes and courses at the federal prison that is located really close to my house here. So I just started looking into this summer. There's a really large penitentiary, and like 5,000 inmates or so. It's pretty big. And then I also realized that it's one of only 8 federal penitentiaries in the U.S. that has female facilities, is what they call it. Starting later this fall, I'm going to start teaching these bird and nature courses from an educational perspective in the female facilities there. They also have both high, medium, and low security facilities for men at this prison, and I'm doing it for the low security men's group as well. So it's been really fun just to go through this whole training process, and just fascinating to kind of wrap my head around my goals that are sort of, just increasing appreciation of nature, but also getting a chance to have these kinds of workshops with an audience that otherwise doesn't have them. So it's also really flipped things on its head. We're not using binoculars. We're going to have very limited physical resources, although I do hope to have some field guides and paper materials and that sort of thing. And for the female facility, it's going to be indoors. We have one window in the classroom, so I did make sure that we have that, but I think it's actually looking at an interior courtyard. So it's going to be this sort of setting where the women in the facilities do go outside every day, but not during our instruction time. So it's like a whole, my head has just exploded as I've started working on this syllabus, which I'm doing for in the next month or so, is honing it. But it's really cool to think about birds from this perspective, and it feels really fresh to me.
That's awesome. Yeah. And also, you think about a bunch of folks that could really just benefit so much from this kind of interaction. I think we talk about how, from an ornithotherapy standpoint, talking about what birding gives us, which is often just being present in the moment, not worrying about other stuff. Mm-hmm. It feels like this could hit a real sweet spot.
Is your thought also to sort of train the folks to be ready for when they leave that place, to have something to do that takes their mind off of all the other stresses of actually connecting into society? Or is it while they're in prison, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's absolutely both. A couple things got me thinking on this. One, I just know very little about the prison system. So I started looking into it just for to learn more myself, and then realized I can get a little bit of firsthand experience of being in one. The prison here is a beautiful location. It is massive. Like I said, it's 5,000 people. There are 500 people in this town that I live in here. It's crazy how many more people are in the facilities than in the area. But it's this giant hilltop that is just so expansive. It's probably the best views I've seen in the county and in this area of the state, just as far as how far you can see. There's this big wetland in there, and folks the opportunities are there to have this appreciation in the moment. And yeah, ideally you're building just that enjoyment, and getting those kind of, therapeutic benefits and mental health benefits from nature that you can continue on in any capacity. That's my goal. Another thing, because there aren't many women facilities in the U.S., I know that women are from all over as well. So it's kind of interesting to think about that too. Hopefully it's something that, you can take other places. And when I'm thinking about putting together lesson plans and that sort of thing for this too, I'm keeping that in mind.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
So you're excited, but are you also a little nervous or scared given the
I'm
fact
so
you're going
nervous.
to this completely different environment than you've ever seen in your life?
I'm nervous about the fact that I'm this excited about it too. I did get a master's in education and I taught middle school for a couple years. And in some ways I feel like there might be some similarities there from like the mix of interests. But a couple things that I know are that this programming is really, really popular. Just having these opportunities. This is also going to count as a bit of like an elective sort of thing for the hours that folks are in this. It can count toward like a I'm not
Like
sure exactly this
like a
terminology.
college type almost
Yeah, so
class, yeah?
they have a GED program,
Uh-huh.
and it's not part of like the core coursework or anything, but they can kind of do these like sort of elective courses that also show that I guess you can like it shows positively on your record that you're doing this programming too. But I know that they're in desperate need of more educators and folks coming in to do this, and that all of these sell out. Like they suggested I have some sort of application process because they said that, and I say sell out, but then they fill. So they asked how many people I wanted to have for the class, and they said whatever you give, you're going to fill it. So be prepared to have that because the adults in custody. I'm learning all this terminology. So again, this is like I'm sure I'm misspeaking in some ways on this as I'm getting the hang of it. But inmates are really really enjoy this programming, and yeah, it's like a competitive thing to get to go into these. So that is my understanding. That is very encouraging to me. I'm excited because I imagine there haven't been other courses like this offered. So I'm excited to offer something like this too.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We will, I guess, hear how it goes when you start getting in there. I mean, I don't know what the privacy things, obviously you probably can't talk specifics about people, but how it goes for you, it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot, like I have all these questions, but we probably should
Right.
leave them to where you start, and when you have more
I have the
answers. Yeah.
questions too. Yeah. And if any listeners have any like thoughts or experiences or anything that you want to share, please do with this as well. I'm so unconcerned with identifying birds, but I was thinking as I was on site doing my training that we are going to spend a lot of time with turkey vultures and we're going to really just look at whatever is accessible as well. It's so not about identifying a species or having a life list. This is about birds.
Mm-hmm. And appreciating the birds that you
yeah. Will you be able to bring from your other volunteer projects one of the teaching birds, the rehab birds at all, or is that not a possibility to have like the vulture come over, and so they can meet a real vulture up close, like you were talking about the black vulture, or I think it was, right?
The craziest thing, at the ACCA, the Avian Conservation Center of Appalachia here, we have both black vulture and turkey vultures that are non-releasable educational birds that go out for this kind of thing. And also the director and founder of ACCA is Katie Fallon, who has authored a book on vultures. So I'm kind of learning as I go, and I think it'd be really cool to teach a course on that. So I've got all sorts of ideas that are some of them are going to have to wait, and we'll see how this goes. But the weirdest thing happened while we were in the training. This conversation just came up, and there was a woman who was teaching persuasive writing and was training from she lives in Virginia but in the DC area, and she does bird rehabilitation, and she has a crow that's educational. That's a fish crow that is albino. She said, like, pink eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was local and wild, and that was attacked by other crows. She said it has never gone along with other crows. So we randomly got into this conversation on educational birds, and I kind of mentioned it to the instructors, but my plan for all of that is to get in there, see what the situation is, and go from there. For the low security men's group, we can be outside, so we actually will have walks. And I think I'm going to take a bit more of a recreational approach to that than maybe more of an educational one in the classroom, just because of the conditions in which we're operating there. But I should be starting in October. I am doing 2 6-week sort of standalone programs that are like an hour each. And I'm going to go from there.
That's pretty cool. There's so much to the whole issue of prisons, the U.S. in particular, people of color. There's all these things that I'm thinking about. As you said, I often think about the fact that a lot of people that end up there, particularly the men, I would think, are folks that probably had a very minor issue like ADHD or something like that, in a situation of living in a neighborhood without very much money and so forth, it spirals into eventually, not going to school, not concentrating, things are all, what I'm trying to say is that these folks are often, there's no reason for them to have ever wound up there, if we had a different society. And maybe this is little things that can be done to allow them to have a positive rest of their lives that, is different from where we failed them as a society in their initial part of their lives. And that's not to say that, many of the folks there don't have a responsibility, but I do think that we also have responsibility to those people who are in there. And like I said, many of them probably in other countries where people have a different aspect of how we treat folks may not have ended up there. So yeah. That's a whole thing. You're probably getting too much into politics there, but yeah. Be interesting to get your take when you meet everybody there.
Yeah, I'll absolutely be reporting back as I can, which in general terms, I think I can talk about this and that'll all be fine too. So look forward to sharing more.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. All right. This is fun. Chatting as we do. Guys, I think it is time to wrap up. We have come upon the hour once again. So I'll probably see you back here next week whenever we get back to recording together in our little boxes and sharing Life List with the world.
Right on.
That's right.
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.